We're a group of GenXers learning about our ADHD and neurodiversity later in life. Join us as we discuss interesting clips we find online and how they relate to our own life experiences. Welcome to This Is How My Brain Works.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of This Is How My Brain Works. So we're hot in Colorado right now, like freaking hot, and our electronics don't love us. So this was supposed to be Sarah's week to share, but her computer just wasn't going to do it. So I'm gonna grab something that I've been having on hold, and we're gonna talk about it instead. So welcome. I'm Krista. We've got Michael, Rudy, and Sarah, and we're excited to chat with y'all today. And this is a quick little we'll have to put this is Claire Bowman official, and we'll have to put her notes in the notes. Yeah. So, and it's very short. So hold on one second. Let me share my screen.
With ADHD or autism that they have like gaydar, but for like neurodivergent people. It's to the point now where I can see someone like across the street and be like, oh, they definitely like are spicy. And I swear to you, before my diagnosis, I did not see. But now I'll just be driving and look over to my husband and be like, do you think that person knows that they're autistic? I can tell within absolute seconds. I don't know if this is just a universal experience or I've just like educated myself so much on it, but like, please let me know if it's just me. I'd be out here diagnosing people.
That's it.
I feel like that guy next to her in the car would just roll down his window and be like this, I'm autistic. You know what I mean? Like these days, people just announce it, like at the stoplight. Hey, are you autistic? Yeah, I am. Thanks. I have autism, or I'm ADHD, and you know, I don't know. People are open now to just kind of.
They are much more open, I feel, to announcing it. Part of that might have to do with all of the late diagnosis going on.
Don't you feel the ability to recognize it? Because I work with a lot of younger people, like seasonal people that just came in, you know, between, you know, years of college or after high school. And I notice little things, you know, that like, oh, it's, you know, it may be a little more difficult for him if you give him too many things to do in the morning. You know, don't give him a whole list of 10 things. He's great if you just give him 2 things, like do this first, finish that up, and then when you're done, come see me and I'll let you know. Like, don't put more things in kids.
Yeah. You
notice things. And they were always, when I first started at my job, I mean, he just let me know right up, we're very accommodating with all walks of life, because we get a lot of walks of life. And I feel sort of the younger generations possibly a little more sensitive on things, and we need to be a little more accommodating and understanding of sort of their plight. And I think at our age, we've talked about before, our knowledge and sort of just this podcast and learning more about ourselves and other people, not only are we able to kind of identify some traits in people that may, you know, reflect autism, ADHD, any sort of spicy neurodiversity. We're also able to, you know, be in a situation where we've been through some of those things. They're not at a point where they understand that, you know, giving them too many jobs at once is difficult. We understand that. And we don't say, oh, you've got ADHD, but we like, you know what, we recognize they need a little more help in this area or this area. That's the way I feel, that I've recognized things in other people where I can make their lives easier, where I knew that no one knew that it was difficult for me when I was 20, 22 years old, nor did I know it was difficult for me to, you know, have too many tasks at once. My brain didn't really accommodate that. I didn't know that then, but I know it now, and I can see it in younger kids, and I have an ability to say, hey, just do this right now. Just take care of that. Don't even worry about anything else. Everything's great. Take your time, relax, do that. And then when you're done, come see me. And the results are, you know, a lot different.
Well, I have a theory that most creatives were undiagnosed. And it's so interesting. So when you work in teams of creatives, which is all I do, I'm literally like, ADHD, spicy. Like I can see it. And I was one of my collaborative partners. I was like, you exhibit a lot of the ADHD stuff, right? And he was like, no, I took a test when I was younger. And I remember us doing one of our weekly things where one of the experts in one of the videos was saying that it can change over time. Like sometimes it can resolve itself and whatever. And I was like, I don't think taking one test when you were in like second grade means that when you're in your 30s, you're absolved. It could just mean that it was missed. And so, but I do think it's because I said, I guess what I, in some ways, am trying to do perhaps is to create a scouts club of people who, but I do like when you're with creative people, I mean, we're geared to think outside the box. I think that, I think that doesn't, when I hear what a real neurotypical has happening in their brain, I don't imagine that's any of my friends who are creative.
Well, how about the test that he probably took in 1980? Do you think that was any indication or an accurate test of what we would see 30 years later or 40 years later? I don't think so. Whatever test he took was probably,
Sarah was going to ask me, like, what have you heard that neurotypicals have? Like, I've heard that neurotypical people do things like not having a voice in their head all the time, being able to complete a task, start to finish, without distraction being an issue, not feeling rejection sensitivity or a grand sense of accomplishment when they finish a task, because that task should just be a task. Like these things that I hear that my neurotypical friends talk to me about, I'm literally like, and again, like as being late stage, explorers of this, or late aged, Gen X explorers of this, we didn't sit around and like hold hands and be like, what's happening inside of your brain, Michael? Tell me about it. So we don't really know what in our minds, everybody's doing sort of the same stuff. There wasn't as much of this space of like exploring how other people experience the world differently it's the reckoning that's happening right now in all kinds of areas, from climate to race to whatever. Like we were not the generation that sat down and said, let's really pick it apart, people, and see how we feel. Like that is not where we were. So I think we're having a lot of aha reckoning moments in general as Gen Xers, and one of which is understanding that other people's brains work differently than ours. And it's literally mind-blowing to me sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're muted, my gal.
My gal.
My gal, my friend. My love.
Oh, am I muted now?
Sarah. Oh,
there you go.
There you are.
Hey,
Sarah.
Hiya. I don't remember what I was gonna say. Oh, I did think about all that stuff. Like as a kid, I remember. Did you guys not play the game of do we see the same color blue?
No.
Maybe
Really?
once.
Okay, so I definitely
I have a vague recollection.
Disclaimer: Sarah grew up in San Francisco. Okay, go ahead.
Right.
No, but Sarah, I do remember being with my dad or other people and pulling up to a stoplight and looking at my dad and going, do you know that person has a whole life that we don't know about? Like they've got friends we don't know. They've got things we don't know. And then whoever it was, because I did that with my dad, my mom, my sisters, whatever. Everybody was like, okay. Like there was no like, ooh, what do you think that is? But I was also always fascinated with the idea that that person has this whole other life that I will never see.
Yeah, so for me, it went even deeper. It was like, not only do I not know about their whole life, but how they're experiencing even the same things as me is potentially different. Like colors. Does salt taste salty to you? Like what does salt taste like to you?
Salt?
Right. How can it taste the same to every person? It can't.
Right. It can't.
It can't. It's so like.
Well, some people don't like cilantro.
No, I don't either. I don't.
Yeah,
like
that's wrong. You're wrong.
Celery.
But I don't. I can tolerate it now.
My husband has the soap taste with cilantro. That's genetic. It's not wrong, right? It's genetic.
It's not wrong, and I was kidding, and I apologize to all you weirdos
all the
who don't like
lovers.
I think there is something to this, though. I believe the video. Now she talked about like once she got a diagnosis, she could see it. Yeah.
So, yeah. Go on, Michael, because you haven't said much.
And that is an experience. That's the experience that I have. I don't necessarily, it's more with the ADHD though. When I got formally diagnosed, I remember going and I might have told this story before on this podcast, but I went and had lunch with my dad. Went to this deli, we're sitting there, and it's not like and I'm able to discuss this, gratefully I can discuss things with my dad, and it's fine. So this wasn't anything like crazy, but I was just sitting down with him. I was like, hey, by the way, I found out through some therapy that I've been formally diagnosed with ADHD. And he goes, what? Wow, really? And he was kind of surprised. And then he thought about it for a second. He goes, I think your mom might have some of that on her side of the family. And I'm sitting here looking at him going, I think I'm pretty sure it came from you. And this is not the time for this conversation. But what happened is, because I started understanding my experience with how my brain works, and with everything from impulsivity to rejection sensitivity to anxiety and all of that, I was able to see when he was getting flooded, or when he got frustrated, or and it turned into an empathetic response, because before then I would just get frustrated with my dad. It would be very frustrating. And there was a long time where I kind of, there was a part of my life where it was like, there's this tension there. And I was just like, I don't really, we just weren't jiving. And you got two ADHDers going. And after that diagnosis, and after I could kind of see him displaying those things, my empathy grew for him. And those things aren't as irritating to me anymore. I mean, there's still things where it's like, okay, you're going to give me a couple ideas right now, aren't you? And I know I can't stop those ideas from coming. I know you're like, your ADHD, the dopamine's kicking right now. Okay, lay them on me. And sometimes I'll be more tolerant than others with accepting those ideas, but it's very helpful. And so then then I had this job where my boss, I'm just watching her. I'm going, holy shit, you are ADHD. And I know you don't have a diagnosis. And then it was just kind of like, it's not really my place to say like, hey, did you ever get an ADHD test? Especially because we were in HR and I didn't. It's like, this probably isn't appropriate.
That's where you come from. And my ADHD is literally like, hey, do you know you got ADHD? The autism piece of the puzzle and the directness. I'm just like, hey, don't you want to know? Don't you want to know that you could be doing this? And you're like, oh, I got to feel the feelings.
Oh, I got to dance around this thing. I don't want to hurt any feelings. I don't know if this is the right way to do it. And it's just the analysis paralysis kicking in. That's where I look at, like, the ADHD, the autism, where that directness, it is refreshing. You do know where you stand. It is like, okay. And I think it's important to, you not take things, not personalize things. I mean, as we start learning more about all of these how we work as a neurodiverse society, you don't take things as personally. You have more compassion, understanding, empathy. But it is true. I do see the ADHD thing. That radar is up. I wouldn't say so much for the ADHD or autism, just because I don't know if someone said, hey, these are the indicators, but we've talked a lot on this show about masking, and how a lot of people that are on the spectrum, they have really honed this masking technique. So I think it would take someone, that was on the spectrum, really identify someone else. I might be wrong.
I had a doctor's appointment this week, and I was thinking about how much I mask at doctor's appointments, especially. This is the first doctor's appointment I've had since sort of this revelation. And I do, like, I mean, in my mind.
What does that look like?
Oh my gosh. I'm going to do it, and it's going to seem crazy because I'm going to push it a little bit. But for me, what it feels like in my body is like, hey, oh no, I'm fine. And everything's great. Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. Yeah, that's what it feels like in my body. And now that I know what I'm doing, and so this time I really, like, I sat with her and I was like, hey, listen, I've had this new thing happen. I think I'm ADHD. And And so I'm going to try to process information a little bit different this time. And I would say it was halfway different. It didn't feel like I didn't leave that doctor's appointment feeling like I had really nailed it, especially with the nurse. With the nurse, I was like, oh, wait, sure, absolutely. I'll stand. Do I need my shoes? Okay. Like it just felt like a crazy person. Like, because I'm also nervous at a doctor's office, but it felt a little bit more grounded in who I really am. And like I was being more honest this time. But it was a real revelation that I don't think I've ever handled a doctor's appointment like that. And therefore a doctor has never really known me.
What was the reception?
Wow.
And is this your regular doctor such that they had a baseline of who you were masking?
I was starting with new insurance and a new practice. So I really liked her. I don't think she has any expertise in that area, so I don't think she was either way, like with it. But I at least felt like I was more honest with what was happening.
Did you have
with
to
me.
do any sort of surveys before don't you, when you go to a new office, don't you have to go through a mental test and write those and like,
Yeah, I
how many
literally
hours of
told her.
sleep do you get? And
Yeah, no,
you
I
know.
told her on the survey, I said, so I can't answer some of your questions on the survey because you've asked 2 to 3 questions and only had 1 box for an answer. And those questions might have different things. So I'm just letting you know, I think I have a touch of ADHD and it will show up in your survey where I wrote, I can't answer this. It's not a clear question, or depends. I can't check a box with this. And because I'm not honest if I'm checking a box. So it did come up a little bit in that, like, I was like, this is a poorly written survey.
All of them. Those haven't been updated in a while. Any sort of survey.
So the indicators, you know, for the ADHD is almost stereotyped. It's like squirrel, you know, someone who has impulsivity, someone who can't stay focused, someone who might be a little hyper, someone who you know, might be a bit emotional or get overwhelmed easily.
Yes.
And so those things are fairly transparent. What would be like some indicators for ADHD or the spectrum person?
My kid has been doing this and it's really funny. So when I was watching this clip, I was kind of, I remarked that the person who was talking was noticing people from a distance, meaning that they weren't having interpersonal relation, like they weren't actually speaking to them. It was body language. And so then that reminded me of my kid who's potentially autistic or ADHD, certainly dyslexic, who said, TikTok, there's a walk. So, and then I said, well, what's the walk? And they said, well, one of them is to walk on your tippy toes, to walk on the balls of your feet instead of heel, toe, toe, heel, toe, heel, toe, heel.
So that's not everyone, but yeah, it's one of the possible indicators. Yeah.
But it's an indicator. And so then I was like, oh my gosh, I have an aunt who is a toe walker when she was a kid. And I have a sibling who was a toe walker when they were a kid. And now I'm purposely not using genders for my sibling because I don't know that they want this out there, but it made me realize that that's a direct line of potential. And then I just went back to Louisiana to visit with family, and we're all sitting around, and literally I was like, you've got it, you've got it, you've got it. But this, back to the point, I was in interpersonal communication. So it wasn't their body language so much as how they were hyperactive or jumping around to topics, or their sense of humor. The sense of humor might be one of my favorite parts of and I'm going to just call it ADHD, because it's so inappropriate. And I had a cousin making jokes with my uncle, who's, you know, in his 70s, and he's got the grandkid is there, and then we're telling off-color jokes and we're all crying and laughing, and it just keeps snowballing of how much fun. But that amount of fun made me realize I almost only have that much fun with people who are ADHD. Like that laughing till your face hurts. Oh, I
I
love
think, Michael, to answer your question too about some of the what I would say broad indicators, because it's not the same for everybody. I think we're finding that this is in all of the spectrum. All of it is a spectrum, and that you can have shades of this or that. But I would say not liking to necessarily be touched unless you're the person who's initiated or you're ready for it. Needing someone to come and sort of prepare you for the thing that's going to happen before you step in, because walking into something unknown is very scary. Eye contact doesn't mean they can't make eye contact, but it's just not comfortable to make eye contact for long periods of time. So I remember I had a student once, he came to me after class, he said, I just want to sit with you and like just talk and listen to you. And his eye contact was so intense. And I remember, I mean, talk about the direct, now we're going to talk about directness, that I literally looked at him and I said, listen, I think you're great. That is a relationship you have with a partner or spouse, not with your mentor. So no, we're not going to do that. So, but when you look back on it, I was terribly uncomfortable with the amount of intimacy through eye contact that he was giving me in that moment. And by the way, and it was not anything else. So it was not like, I don't mean intimacy like he was being inappropriate. It was really like, I want to mind meld and like hang out, and it wasn't anything else. But I still was like, no, thank you. Info dumping. When we really like you.
special interests.
With our special interests, like whoo. And now at least when my kid does it, I go, are we having an info dumping session? He'll go, yes. And I'll go, okay, then I can be prepared. And he'll literally, like, there's nothing that's going to stop him from talking to me about rocks or dinosaurs or whatever it is or whatever research he has found for that period of time until we're there. What philosophical idea he's heard, whatever. He can come to me with the idea of we're going to have a conversation, but we're going to talk, but really what he really wants is just to dump at me. And I had a friend who said, my brother was in town, it was really interesting. We went on a hike, but he's a geologist, and all he talked about for 8 hours was rocks. I was like, oh, on spectrum? And he went, what? And I was like, is he on spectrum? I was like, when? I was like, oh, that's how we share love. We info dump.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask, what is the, like,
That's a
what is
love
the
language.
Intrinsic thing that's going on? That's the
And
love language.
Yeah, an extraordinary sense of justice is a piece of the autism puzzle, is a trait. Awesome. Like, so the idea of like, no, I cannot, in integrity, I will not do that. That's why a lot of them go into the law, and into engineering and into things like that. And then I think too, this idea that
Black and white thinking.
Black and white thinking.
Whoa.
Absolutely.
Is black and white thinking the same thing as binary thinking? Or okay, because I've heard binary a lot as far as
and I think also this idea that this is a new one I've learned and I do it. So I've been really interested in learning more about it. Besides being oppositionally defiant, which we talked about offline, about when someone tells me to do something and I'm like, I don't want to right now. But one of the other traits I'm really learning about is this sense of when you see something, you say something. And so so if somebody says, hey, I fell off my horse and it really hurt, a lot of people want someone to go like, oh, I'm so sorry. That sounds like it's awful. They want the empathy piece. And this is why I always say when I taught empathy or when I teach empathy, the empathy does not have to be intrinsically given. It can be taught, because I don't always feel empathy in the way that a neurotypical feels empathy, but I've learned to offer empathy in the way that someone else might like it. What I feel is I want to tell you a story so I know how you feel, because that to me
I
is
fell off a horse
point.
one time too.
And it hurt too. And so we are now together. And some people are like, but now you're taking the spotlight off of me. And I'm just trying to say, I just want to share what wisdom I have, because to me, that's providing value to you in this moment. And look at Jason. He's like,
what's coming up, Rudy?
Fuck that value, man.
What's coming
just
up for
love
you?
me.
Well, I'll tell you this. There are some times where I get kind of like, I'm in a pissy mood. And unless my wife asks me a question as a question, I don't need to respond. So if it's like this, I went to Walgreens today and got some crayons. And then in my head, I'm thinking, I don't need to respond to this. It's not a question. She's just saying. And then if she asks me, well, like, why didn't you respond? I'm like, you didn't ask a question. I don't know. Like, I'm in a little pissy mood. Unless it's a question, that empathy goes away. Like, they can tell their story, but sometimes I feel like I don't need to respond. I'm not going to respond because it wasn't in form of a question. She's not asking me a question. She's info dumping and just saying it. And it wasn't a question. And then the whole time in my head, I'm thinking, but what if she asked me why I didn't respond? So then I've got to say, because you didn't ask a question, because it wasn't informative. Then it's a whole little spat, and then it's like a thing. But I get in those moods where I have no empathy. I just don't want to talk. And unless it elicits some sort of response from me, I'm not going to respond.
But I will say that the other last little thing about all that is that when we say something directly, we don't understand why people think we're mad. So, I've said this my whole life, and I've even said it on this podcast before. If I say something that's really direct and people are like, well, she's really mad at me. And I'm like, if I'm mad at you, I will literally say, I'm mad at you. Like, I don't, like, there's not a lot of like, but the fact that I can be direct, and that is a neurotypical or someone with ADHD is not always used to that, and they get their feelings hurt, and then I come back and I say, I promise you, I did not mean to hurt a feeling. I did not feel any anger. I did not come at you that way. I just stated what was true for me. But there's a real barrier to people thinking that I really do function without this massive layer of feeling behind it.
And that's how Lisa is. And then what I do is people, those of us with spicy minds, first thing is we think we did something wrong because we want to be people pleasers. So if they say something, our filter is immediately like, we did something wrong, we're to blame, we didn't do it right, we got to fix it. And we take a defensive attitude immediately. Right. I do. Because
so Krista,
I don't want to make a mistake.
The directness, like we were talking about, like what is the intrinsic motivator or behind that dump?
To be clear.
To the directness, to be clear. Like there's an impulse. So I'm just saying, like, okay.
To be clear, and like I said, that sense of justice. Like I think I have a real intrinsic desire to be precise and clear. And I believe that clear is kind is clear. Say it, say what you mean what you say, don't say it mean.
Well, this is interesting then. So your intent is to, like, if I'm kind of putting that together, is to be kind, right? I want to be kind here and offer this insight. And then it's being received in a different way. So that I imagine that's very, that's a bummer for
confusing.
You.
It's confusing.
I'm going to use a technical word here. A bump.
I think
you
that's
get the
right,
bummies.
Sarah.
Yeah.
I think it's confusing.
It's confusing, but you might feel bad. Like if someone's going to say like, you were mad at me, you might also, it's confusing, but
sometimes, no, I don't feel bad because I'm like, not always. I mean, I feel bad that someone else feels bad. I guess I have some empathy towards that, but it's sort of like, well, that wasn't my intent.
Right.
So I've lived a whole life where I feel like there's been a disconnect with what I've meant and how I've been received.
Yeah.
And then that's where the masking comes in, because then you go, oh, okay, well, I gotta go be nice and not say the things and do this, and you got to do it a different way so that you're not. So that other people are not perceiving you in a way that you are not even meaning anything.
Which I imagine can be exhausting.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah.
I'm going to make
it's hard to find really good relationships.
You've got to go on being as direct as you can. I found it, I know it's hard for you. Lisa's the exact same way. She is very direct. She doesn't mince words. There is no filter. When she wants to say it, she says it. And I always take it as there's something behind it. Like, what were you thinking to ask me that question?
Totally.
She's always like, nothing. And I'm like,
nothing.
There must have been something in your head.
Believe her. Believe her.
And the thing is, she's like, no. And she says it directly. And the truth is, people around you, Krista, and people around Lisa know that she's direct. And I think those people start to take it a little differently and realize, like, she's a direct person. We as society, we're not ready for the directness. None of us are ready for the directness.
But so what are some tools for the ADHDer to not go into rejection sensitivity, to not go into, the need to, whether it be people please or whatever.
The ADHD person would say, handle your own shit. But what were you going to say, Sarah? Because you're going to be more helpful.
Right. You're
so
right.
as you guys are all talking,
it's on you, not on me.
What's really remarkable is that I am both of those things. And I'm like, when you're talking, Krista, about being direct, I am 100% guilty of that 1,000 times. And anyone who knows me is like, yeah, girl. But at the same time, the beating myself up, people pleasing, not wanting to say, and masking and that ADHD prong, I'm like, I can't decide what in one situation I'll do both.
ADHD.
It's so ADHD. But what I would say is helpful for me when I get hit with that rejection sensitive dysphoria is to remember not to personalize it and to say, when someone tells you so like, let's say that what it is someone's like, oh, I hate it when you don't do this. Don't clean up after yourself. Let's say it's that. I imagine in my head, yes. And so it's, yes, I didn't clean this up, which is not the end of the world. And this is bothering them for some of their own personal reason. So it's like, it's kind of the opposite of don't take it personally. It's everything that anybody says is personal to them. So I can either take what I want from it or leave it. And that's sort of the trick with masking versus not masking. Or impact versus intention. Like my intention when I'm direct is not to hurt people's feelings, but I'm an asshole or jerk if I don't recognize that in stating it with my pure intentions, it's had this negative impact. And on the flip side, when someone tells me, I'm going to assume that their intentions were good, regardless of how it impacted me. I try to live in this world of I am responsible for my impact. That's and good. I'm going to take everybody else at their intentions. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to play a trick on myself and I'm going to assume good intentions.
Right.
Because it doesn't matter if they have bad intentions. If I'm setting up healthy boundaries and I'm, taking them at their impact, at their intentions, I can kind of inoculate myself from that RSD. I still have the moment where I feel it. Mm-hmm. But kind of something we were talking about earlier, I'm quicker to see that I'm doing it and just say, oh, you know what? I'm just going to observe it and let it happen. And I'm going to disengage.
You can recover quicker.
Yeah. Jason, shoot it.
Well, I know, but we only have 30 seconds and I have a feeling that Michael has to pick up kids. So I really want to be, I want to be on time for him. So unfortunately, we're going to have to take this into another time. I will say one thing, because you asked the question directly, and I want to make sure we answer the question directly, ADHD, is when you said, is there a tip or trick? And from my end, what I'm learning to do with Greg is to say it. I see that you're taking, I see it in your eyes that you're taking this. Please don't. That was not the intention. Yes. I can see you're not listening to me. And I need to give you information that's really clear and important right now. So can you focus on me? And he'll do the same stuff. He's starting to do that same type of thing to me. So I think
and him not knowing that you're being like in like a demeaning way, or like you can't handle these things and I'm going to talk to you like a child, like whatever. I mean, it's just like
but I mean, he's got to handle I can't handle his stuff. I can't be in his brain. All I can do is say, in order for us to be productive, because we've got kids and we got 2 minutes to be productive. I see you've glazed over. Are you listening to me? No, I'm not. Right. That's exactly what I thought. So can you stop so we can start again? So, I mean, sometimes it's just literally like, we don't have time to go through it. We just got to get her done.
Well said, Krista. Well said. Good clip today.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us on another episode of This Is How My Brain Works, and we'll be back another time next week. Bye, everybody. I just said everybody instead of everyone, so please keep that in.
Goodbye. Bye to your buds.
Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.
Your bud.
Bye, buds.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Welcome, bud.
And scene.
If you like this episode of This Is How My Brain Works, please like, subscribe, and share. For more info on today's clip, the hosts, and our podcast, check out the show notes. Thanks for listening.